You're a busy professional. You don't have time for fluff. You need strategies that work, and you need them fast. Welcome to Busy Bro Fast Wellness with me, your host, Alan Welch. We're here to give you science-backed hacks and actionable tips to boost your focus, minimize friction, and maximize your results. Less time, more impact. It's time to get well, stay strong, and thrive. Let's get to it. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm delighted to bring you the second part of the interview that I did with Scott Lynch of The Motivated Mind. And in this interview, he speaks about his achievement document, which focuses on the mind, body, finances, adventure, and random. And there are no rules. You set your own parameters on this one. And also, we speak about simplicity and minimalism and how we can find peace, and also how we can bring minimalism into technology as well. And we also speak about how we can easily build life-changing habits that really endure. I hope you enjoy the podcast. I'll see you on the other side. And like you, I mean, for me, for example, starting a podcast, it was, and it sounds a bit cliche, but it was as much for me to help me as well as I would experiment, try different things. And then I can impart my knowledge onto other people. And a lot of things that I've talked about, I probably wouldn't employ myself, but there are many things I've taken away. And, you add those one or two things here and there, you pepper those in your own life, and you see that positivity and you get the results from it, whether it's sort of psychologically or physically or a combination of the both. It's a win-win situation. Course direct, as you said in one of your recent podcasts, that subtle course direction that could pay dividends in the long run.
It's funny. I sense, oh my goodness, maybe 2020 have kept an achievement document that I have, and I break this down into a few different categories: mind, body, and finances, adventure, and then random. And anytime and these can be granular things. I mean, there's no rules. I think that's a fun thing about life too, is there actually is no rules.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. Yes, there's laws, there's regulations around things, but for the most part, you have all the freedom in the world. And so you can add anything that you want to these achievements, but it's really fun for me to know that I'm making progress every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year. And what's really cool is being able to go through all of those achievement documents and go like, wow, would I have ever thought that I would be where I am today? I feel the best physically and mentally that I've ever felt. Like if I went back in time, I could kick the living crap out of the physical 22-year-old me, which I never would have thought,
Yeah.
Being a dad and the stresses of life. But that is because of the intention that I've put behind my life. And so you feel really proud about that. And I think that a lot of people struggle with those things, but changing these things in your life makes you feel so good that the alternative, because you came from the alternative, feels bloated and disgusting and heavy, and there's a lack of mental aerodynamics behind it, and you realize, I don't want to go back to that feeling. That was just the worst prison in the world. And so when you start doing these things, you become more empathetic because you're like, I was there, and that was such a crappy way to live. It wasn't a way to live. You feel like an NPC, a non-playable character. And so it's an addiction when you start to achieve these different things, and not in it interrupts my whole life or experience. It's just, wow, what else is out there? What else am I capable of?
Absolutely.
It just builds great opportunity and curiosity, which I think are really important fuel sources for everybody.
That's very inspirational. Yeah, for sure. One of my only minor kind of concerns, which I have to be mindful of myself, is that as you are kind of making these achievements, or you're progressing in your own way, whatever that would be, psychologically or mentally, physically, but then you're looking around you because you've seen your former self and your present self, and you're making that transformation. You notice in other people when they're not kind of going in that direction, and you have to hold back and think, I can't really say anything because that would come across as preachy. So that's something which I guess you sort of have to keep in check. I don't know if there's a way to navigate that in a sort of subtle way, and it's just a hard one. And I did think about that prior to even going on this journey about, oh, I'm going to see all these sorts of things where people could make improvements. And I'd like to sort of, I can't say anything because it's just the wrong thing to do, because you'll be hated for it. You'll be absolutely loathed for it.
It is a very hard thing, and you and I talked about this before. That was something that I just spend a lot of time with my podcast, because at the beginning, it did admittedly, and I think it's important to be honest with ourselves, it felt
Mm.
preachy. It felt like I was talking down. It felt like I was somehow superior because I was doing these different things, and I was like, "Man, imagine if I was sitting in the audience shoes and listening to this. Would I just put the phone down, hit pause, or say, screw this
Yeah.
guy? Like, who does he think he is?" And that's where I changed up the format to use storytelling to break through that. I am not better than anybody else. The only person that I compete with every single day is yesterday's self.
Yeah.
That's it, and I try to leave the day a little better than I found it. And I'm just giving individuals dialogue and insight into that experience in the hopes that someone goes, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly what I'm feeling," or "That's exactly what I'm going through," or "That's exactly the challenge that I'm at right now," or "That's the stage in life that I'm going through." And hopefully through that, plus the addition of humor and more original advice, people go, I receive and objectively understand where he's coming from. Therefore, the chances increase that I'm going to apply this in my
Yeah.
life, which that's literally the goal then, right? And so that's the way that I've balanced that. But it's come with a lot of lessons and taken a lot of time, and it's something that I've thought about a
Okay.
lot since I started the
Yeah, that's really
podcast.
interesting. I get this sort of funny when your stories was about the Mexican fisherman. I get
Oh,
I know that was a great story, but now I think you got this idea of like fishing, and you're just hoping to catch one person there. One fish might just take the line. If that's a good enough analogy. Because you're just in there, and you don't know who's going to take the line. But anyway, that's great. Thank you. I do have there is a question which is really sort of about positive and the impact, which we've been alluding to anyway, really. But um, in your own life, if you had to pinpoint just one mindset habit that has profoundly shaped your life and your success, what would it be and why?
it's simplicity and minimalism. It is, and I think that goes beyond decluttering your
Yeah.
closet, right? It goes much deeper into simplifying my goals, my habits, my commitments. And the reason why I think this has been the best mindset and framing and perspective, and I mean, it covers so many different areas of your life, is because complexity is the enemy of execution. And when I look at even my companies, when I first started them, they were, if I were to explain them or even give an elevator pitch, you would, I mean, my wife is a great example. My wife, Mel, she's like, "I feel exhausted just listening to that." And that was interesting to me that she had that response. We bust each other's chops a lot in a very healthy way. I think that's important. But I went, I wonder if I'm going about this completely wrong, right? Why do I need to push the biggest boulder up the hill? And can I find a board and a rock to help me get it to a different stage on the hill? And so I think simplicity and minimalism has helped me to declutter my entire life in the physical and digital realm. And because there's been this declutter, I have a much more clear vision on how I'm going to execute my
Yeah.
life and simplify my life. And I think what's really accelerated that perspective for me is, again, having a 2.5
Yeah.
year old daughter. My time just got cut in two
Mm.
thirds. So I realized that reality is one thing and my hopes are another thing. And I am not going to be able, currently operating it the way I'm operating and the perspective that I have, bring those two worlds together. So therefore, what is the best and most logical step It's to simplify, focus on the most important things, and continue to just chisel away at
Yeah.
that every single day. And what has happened in response to that, as the outcome, has been that I feel less stressful. I'm less anxious. I don't feel like I need to go on social media. I haven't had on my phone for maybe 4 months
Mm.
now. It might be even longer. And there's none of this filler anymore. And now that there isn't filler, there isn't all this noise. Now that there isn't this noise, there's clarity. Now that there's clarity, I understand more of what I need to
Mm.
do, right? My internal motions, I'm able to digest, accept, and clearly communicate them to myself. Everything just becomes more
Good.
peaceful. And that's the only thing I think since I've passed 30 that I've ever wanted. If someone was like, I can give you one thing, I shined the proverbial lamp, I can give you one thing, it would be peace. I just want peace in my life, internally and externally. That's
Mm.
it. And I think that simplicity and minimalism brings both of those
Yeah.
things, at least
No,
for
that's
me.
great. I mean, the idea of striving for ultimately for peace, that's something which I didn't even think about till I'd passed 50, and then after that point, that's when I began thinking, oh, I would like more peace in my life. But, so
Mhm.
yeah, no, there's something you mentioned about the minimalism. Obviously, you also talk in your podcast about the use of technology. So you obviously combine, and you say you're a bit of a techno geek. I'm not sure they're the right words, but something along those lines. So how do you incorporate that technology into the simplicity? Because they do seem to be almost contradictory forces. I'm just curious.
So it is a great question. I think that when I had mentioned fulcrums earlier, technology, two things can exist and be true. And I think as humans, we think very binary. If I have this, I can't have this. If I do this, then I'm not going to be able to do this. And I think that's um, a tough way to go about life. And so I don't look at technology as if I have technology, therefore I am not a
Mm.
minimalist. I think about how can I practically bring minimalism into
Right.
technology. So for me, that it goes very granular down to unsubscribing from 90% of the email list that I have. Like, am I truly getting something from this when I read it? Is it changing my emotions, my feeling, my perspective? If it isn't, it's a simple yes and no
Right.
filter, right? I cut my goals down per year. Technology, my phone is all uh, show you. It's all black
Oh,
and
wow.
white. Everything's very minimalized down. If you go into my folders, which I gave an episode on this, everything is filed down to a system called Para. So it just breaks down to projects, areas, what's the other one? Resources and archive. So I've decluttered my digital
Right.
world as I would have done as I originally did with my closet. I have 32 pairs of clothes in
Wow.
total. I have maybe 10 t-shirts, that's it. And it's not because I wanna say I'm better than anybody else because I have 10 t-shirts, and maybe a little bit of that is, but it is really about I don't want decision
Yeah.
fatigue in everywhere that I go. So when I open up my phone, there isn't bright colors on my phone. I don't feel compelled or there is no red notifications that come up on my phone. The whole thing is in a black and white
Yeah.
scale. So nothing feels doesn't make me feel anxious. It elicits peace. It's like, "Oh, yeah, that aesthetically, it looks really nice and really clean, but I can just leave it at that. It doesn't create further curiosity or triggers. So that's going down from emails to notes to my computer. I don't have 75,000 different tabs open. I don't have 75 different applications. I don't have social media on my phone. I try to pause before I use anything and say, what am I looking to get
Okay.
out of this? Right? I try to stop knee-jerk reactions, and that's why I removed social media from my phone because I felt like it was just becoming a
Yeah.
filler. And then that filler, I'm like, oh, that's creating the noise. The noise is creating the lack of clarity. The lack of clarity is creating anxiety. And, it's this big snowball effect. So technology can be a great thing. I also use tools I've talked about it quite a bit on my podcast over the years called Asana, and that's how I manage all of my tasks and I color code them. And there's maybe 4 things that I really try to get that I put on each of those days. Some days, I'll be honest, obviously, I can go over because I'm a human and I'm imperfect, but that's how I've leveraged technology to simplify my life. It is not a crutch. It is not an
Right.
interrupter. It is seamlessly meshed into the physical minimalism too as well. Even down to the car I drive. There's nothing in my vehicle at all except the vehicle. That is the only purpose of my vehicle is to get me from destination A to B. I don't need it to do 9 trillion other things. Just like my phone, the main purpose is for communicating. Therefore, why do I need 75,000 other things on
Yeah.
my phone to detract me from the one intention or the 2 intentions behind my phone? It seems very counterproductive and
Yeah. No,
counterintuitive
that's,
to
that's
me.
great. That, in fact, although in many areas of my life I've tried to simplify things in terms of time, the way that I go about things, the way I structure my day, those types of things. One of the things that I do need to improve on, that's for sure, is decluttering in terms of digital. My apps on my phone, my Mac, for example, it's starting to get folders and files. I do need to go through that. So it's a great thing. My Google Drive is starting to look a little bit chaotic. So I know that once those things
It
do happen, I will feel better. You'll feel just better inside. That's for sure.
Yeah, you don't feel as, like, itchy, and here's the thing, I think that we struggle with silence. We need to fill every second and every day with stimulation. You know, even an ad comes on TV, what do most people do? Just watch them when you're with friends. They pick up their phone and they go on social media. When you're at a restaurant and maybe the conversation has died down, what do people do? They pick up their phone. You come back from an overstimulating day, what do you want to do? You drown out with Netflix. Like, we're just all of these opportunities, life like
Yeah.
hands us. It's like, hey, Scott, here's an opportunity where it's just pure silence and boredom, which is a good thing. And you're like, you want to know what? I am going to jam the hell out of that moment and squeeze in as much noise as I can. And you go, wait a minute. I don't know that that makes sense. And then I just feel heavy and exhausted at the end of the day. And then it's a compound from there. Then my sleep scores off, my REM and deep sleep. You know, it's just, it all
Yeah.
compounds. And so when I worked everything backwards in like this map, a pirate's map, I was like, oh, that's where the
I
treasure
know.
is. It's just starting at the very beginning, which is removing about 90% of the crap that the whole world tells you that you need. You turn on the TV and it's like, you need this fancy car and this fancy device, or else you are going to suck and your life's going to be miserable. And you go, oh, okay, yeah, I need that $50 water bottle. Somehow my life will transform if I buy this $50 water bottle that glows and vibrates that tells me I need to drink
Yeah.
water. And the answers are just so much more simple
Yeah.
than that. You know, and I'm in favor of capitalism, but here in the United States, I think this has gotten out of hand with you need this thing or else your life will not change and won't get better. And I'm over here shouting like, no, you need less things and then your life will get better. Don't listen to these companies that obviously the benefit is for them to sell more products and more of this thing. Do quite the opposite and you'll feel
Yeah, it
better.
is slightly worse in the United States than it is in France or in England or Spain. I mean, my some of my folks live out there. When I go out there to visit, the commercials, etc., on the television, that's absolutely evident that you're getting bombarded all over the place to buy as much junk as possible. One of the things that you just mentioned there made me think about this. Obviously, we all know what FOMO is, but this idea of JOMO. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's like FOMO versus JOMO. So the fear of missing out. I need that. I want that latest gadget. I need this. But the joy of missing out, when you think, no, I'm just happy to have simplicity in my life and just keep it to the bare minimum and keep what's going on in here as clear as possible and having a wholesome and fulfilling life in a simple way. The joy of missing out. Yeah, that's quite cool.
I love that. I had a mentor when I started my second company tell me that stop focusing or stop being distracted by the shiny objects. And that has been such a special piece of feedback that I got because it's transcended into my personal life in that when I see groups of crowds around something, so let's say you're walking by the beach, a boardwalk, and all of a sudden there's a massive crowd somewhere, that the knee-jerk reaction is, "Oh, what's going on over there?" Or you drive down the highway, at least here in the States, and people conjugate. There's
Yeah.
groups of people around each other, almost like I can't drive unless there's 20,000 other cars around me, which to me is just it's crazy. I'm like, "Oh, I just see increase of accident chances going through the roof." But, so the knee-jerk reaction is, "Oh, I'm curious what's going on there," and so the crowd gets bigger. What I have tried to do, and this is a continual practice, is when there is big crowds or big waves of people doing it, quite the opposite happens with me where I go, if most people are doing it, it's mostly not the best thing to do. And the way that I think about that is anytime you hear these statistics that go, well, the average weighs or the average diet or this, and I'm like, why would you ever compare yourself to the average? The average is absolute trash, right? And I don't mean that in a condescending way. That's just
Yeah.
objectively true. Objectively, the average here in the United States is overweight. Okay, so logically, if that's the case, why do I then want to go where the crowds are or buy the same products that a majority of people are buying? Because the outcome is very clear. It's not great. And so when I see crowds, for me, in digital, like people going to a certain app or downloading a certain app or, going to a certain thing, I think quite the opposite of like the outcome is probably not going to align very well. And this is a shine with my life, and this is a shiny object time moment that I need to be careful about. And
Yeah.
and that is again the biggest part of minimalism is removing physical and digital distractions.
Yeah, that's great advice. And we haven't even touched on anything to do with exercise or nutrition, so I could sort of carry on forever and talking about these sort of topics. But it's been, really, really lovely speaking to you. And I feel that because of time, and we have spoken for quite a long time at the moment, which is brilliant. And there's a lot of content, a fantastic content there. But I'd just like to leave, obviously, you to mention your podcast, and so where can people find it? Obviously, I will leave a link in the show notes, etc. But is there anything else that you would like to mention about the podcast, or anything else on your end before we sign off?
I think, if you're interested in listening to the podcast, I would be e- extremely grateful. It's just The Motivated Mind. You can find it anywhere, Spotify, Apple. I will just leave people with this. Because you mentioned exercise, but this is true outside of exercise. Whatever you're facing right now, a habit you're trying to create, which is a struggle for many of us, start smaller than you think you need to
Mhm.
start. And that goes for exercise, and that's the way I've built up my healthy habits. I didn't, and my wife and I were just talking about this. I didn't all of a sudden, when I do stretching and then high intensity strength training and then pre-fatigue running, they came in pieces. I started stretching for a few minutes, and then stretching was like, "Oh, I feel really good about this. Maybe I'll start working out more." And then I started working out for 10 minutes, then 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then thought, I'm going to increase intensity. And then it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to start running. I'm going to start running at 0% incline, then 2%, then 5%,
Yeah,
then 10%. I'm going to start eating healthy. It just compounded. The goal is not intensity in life, it's identity. And identity is not created without small incremental
absolutely.
changes. And so I think where most of us get tripped up is again, want to do 17 different things to change my life. And it's like, how about we just try one? If you want to journal, how about you just try it for 1 minute? If you want to meditate, why don't you try it for 2 minutes? If you want to wake up earlier, don't try waking up an hour or half an hour earlier. Try doing
Yeah,
5 minutes and then change that over time. And then you look back in a month and you're exactly where you wanted to be. And the chances of you getting there substantially increase by at least 20x when you go that different path. So I'd say for everybody in life, if you want to make things more obtainable, just start smaller than you think
yes,
you
yes.
need to, and it will transform your identity. And then you will become the healthy person, the person who meditates, the person who journals. And once you start doing those things, it becomes an addiction and you feel really good. And you go, where other small areas in my life can I improve? And then it's a compound
I mean,
effect.
I couldn't agree more with that. That's absolutely brilliant advice. And you've obviously given an array of examples there. And I used to say the same thing about running, because I was a massive runner, a serious runner in my time. And people would ask me, and I said, well, just run for 2 minutes, and then 3 minutes, and then 4 minutes. In a month, you're up to half an hour, aren't you? Whatever. And it was like, oh, that's a good idea. That's simple, but you can apply that concept as you've just done.
Mm.
And it's so important that people have that. It's so important. Here we go. Don't want to be too preachy, but it's so important that it's such a simple, actionable tip that can be employed. So that's brilliant. And thank you so much, Scott. I've enjoyed this chat. So it's been so insightful on so many levels. And I'd love to speak to you again in the future, sometime down the line. And well, I'm really pleased you agreed to come on. That's wonderful. Thanks so much. And I bid you farewell, and you can catch Scott, the Motivated Mind, on any of the main platforms. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Goodbye. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.